Now the exchange rate is about 15.7. It's inching closer to 16 cities to get $1. And that has ramifications for our economy. We can speak now to Dr. Richmond Etiani. He's a banking consultant joining us. Chief, good morning.
Good morning, Francis. How are you?
I am well, sir. I trust you're well and keeping safe.
By His grace, I'm doing very good.
We thank God. We thank God. I don't know if you've had cause to do any business that requires you trading some CDs for $1. Have you noticed the rise and the level of depreciation?
Well, Francis, thank you very much. Although I don't have cause to do any business that involves in dollar transaction, but I've been following it critically, and I've seen that the dollar is on the rise again. You know, in our last conversation about a month ago, I told you that what you see about the stability was cosmetic, and the real value of the city would have to be moving forward. I mean, it's not going to stop where it is, because seriously, we don't have what it takes to stop it. The demand for the currency is so much, but the supply is limited. And when I say the supply is limited, you heard about the cocoa that we had last year, cocoa that we are going to get this year. You heard about the gold that you're talking about. I mean, the demand is higher than the supply, and definitely the city would have to go down to a certain limit before we can say the city has stabilized.
So, in view of, but can't the discussion relative to our creditors, the review by the IMF for our program, the release of funds, forex that could come into the country as a result, not help us in seeing some level of stability for our currency in the short term?
Thank you very much. I mean, we know we have always been dependent on this donor support. And if not donor support, we go to the euro to borrow to show the currency. But you see, the total demand, let me give you a statistics about oil alone. We have to import $400 million every month. Multiply 400 by 12, you're talking about 4.8 billion. That is the oil demand. We haven't gone into other commodities like pharmaceuticals and what have you. Unfortunately, we haven't managed the economy to be able to stand this depreciation. And there is no magic wand. You hear that the donors are giving us money. What even makes that money very dangerous for countries is that we are actually increasing our debt. You see, we are talking about debt restructuring. But if the donors should give you 1.5 billion to support the banking sector or whatever sector, it goes to compound our external debt. And that makes what we are doing very dangerous. Those of us who are in finance and banking and accounting will tell you that we are taking a very short-term approach to sustain the dollar, the cedi. So what it can support it in a short term, but it's not sustainable because it is not enough to support the demand. It's not enough at all. It is not enough. I mean, there are certain areas which I have written a lot that I believe if the country was a very serious country, remittances, I mean, the remittances, even what has been captured on the Bank of Ghana statement for 2022 and 2023 is bigger than cocoa and gold. But unfortunately, a lot of remittances are not properly tracked, so they are not coming to the economy. If I can get you some figures, last year the World Bank said that Ghana was expected to have received 7.2 billion from inward remittance or foreign remittances. If you look at the data that was submitted last week by the Auditor General accounts on the Bank of Ghana, half year was only 1.3 billion. I mean, so the rest, where will be the rest? And where the rest will be is where I'm going to tell you. It's a quite frightening thing. We have taken to, instead of we looking at the foreign exchange depreciation and taking majestic approach to address it, we have now licensed what we call the fintech under the Payment Service Settlement and Services Act, where people are now holding on to the remittances for which the cedi has been credited to Ghana, the Ghanaians. And nobody seems to be bothered about what I've been saying. And last year, according to the Bank of Ghana, 57 billion worth of cedis, the equivalent is being withheld by fintech, the 11 fintech that was licensed by Bank of Ghana. If all this, even if 50% of the 5 billion from remittance withheld by the fintech were to come into the currency, at least the currency will stabilize. So that is what I'm saying, that the short time, I think government, the finance ministry, Bank of Ghana, they should look at the Foreign Exchange Act vis-a-vis the Payment Settlement Service Act and see the dichotomy between the two so that they can rectify it so that all foreign exchange, irrespective of remittances, will come into the banking sector. So until we get to that point, the city is not going to stop today. Even if it's stopped today with the IMF little money coming in, it will continue because we are going to go into the time we import for Christmas, and that one would accelerate it. So that is, Francis, if you ask me, that is my careful thoughts about it.
I'm seeing some reports this morning about some possible debt forgiveness as a result of our discussions with the bilateral creditors. I'm reading that the President has tasked the finance minister to set up a special account to give back the $10.5 billion debt forgiveness by both our bilateral creditors and Eurobond holders to be used for specialized and targeted projects to support the economic growth of the country. And that government has been able to conclude this negotiation with the bilateral creditors and bond holders, resulting in a debt forgiveness of about $10.5 billion. Do you find this as possible forgiveness or deferred?
Well, you see, we will call it deferred. It's not forgiveness. We are not in a HIPIC state. The HIPIC has been completed in 2006. All that they are doing is that they are deferring this amount of payment that was due to them. But 2028, if my memory serves me right, 2028, going, we'll be paying for it. You're not going to pay it. So we give you a breathing space. So those monies that you could have used in paying, that will be withheld. But you would definitely pay. You would definitely pay the interest and the principal. So we are not in a HIPIC state. In the HIPIC, there was cancellation, what we call debt forgiveness. This is not debt forgiveness. Let Ghanaians get it clear. You're just saying that I'm not able to pay, but I'm giving you withhold the payment today. But as from next 2028 or 2029, you're going to pay both the outstanding and the principal that you deferred. So it is not a question of clapping your hands. I would never ever clap my hands. If it was debt forgiveness, as you said, like the HIPIC, then I think we should take our heart and say, hey, hallelujah, praise be to God. But if you're just deferring the payments, which we are doing, it is called debt reprofiling or debt rescheduling. We are doing the two. Rescheduling means that your principal and the interest due to them has been postponed to a certain date so that you pay. So the consequence, the problem that I have is that all this forgiveness, all this, what you call it, debt risk, like 10 point something billion, setting a committee, we must target the agric sector. Agric sector, rice, maize, so that in 3-4 years' time, we'll be able to export so much to pay for the outstanding and the accumulated debt. If we also take advantage of it and consume it as we've been consuming the Eurobond money into consumption, we're going to keep this country on the debt trajectory. We call debt trajectory like Greece and Argentina. Greece and Argentina. Every 4 years, they had to go to IMF for debt restructuring. So we shouldn't be jubilating, because if it is a HIPIC type or debt forgiveness, we can say kudos. But this one, all that you are saying, you're not paying your interest. You're not paying your principal. I'm giving you 28 going. You'll be paying the outstanding, what I forgave you, so make ready to pay. So it is not a question of separate. It gives you a breathing space. It gives you only a breathing space, but it's not a solution to the problem.
We've had a conversation before about how we look to this time of trouble or crisis and take far-reaching decisions that help us to become better tomorrow. You mentioned agric being and major vehicle. Are we approaching are we approaching the agri sector properly? And by that I mean from a policy standpoint. There's been planting for food and jobs as one element. We already also know of the post-COVID recovery work being done and the economic enclaves project that is being done and being coordinated by the Millennium Development Authority, MIDA, working with the Finance Ministry and also other agencies to ensure that we push a lot of young people into farming. What more can we do to, on a long-term basis, create a proper foundation of stability for our currency, the Ghana Cedi?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's a very, very important question, relevant. You know, we need to have a national strategic economic diversification policy. The reason why I'm saying is that all the things you just said, whether it's PFG or whether it's 1G wires, how are they going to improve the sector? I'm not saying anytime you create enabling environment for the private sector to go into it, that is where you get results. Unfortunately, we tend to publicize it and make it like as if it's going to, until we come to the strategy which the Nigerians use to address the rice production, we won't get where we are going. Because immediately the politicians comes in, they make it look good. But I had a chance to travel to Amantin recently to look at a rice project. Somebody, I won't mention his name, about 1,500 acres, what he's doing. These are the people we should identify. So our institutions like Development Bank and Exim Bank, they are supposed to target these people for future growth. Because development banks in other jurisdictions are used to support the economic diversification. We create the institutions, but the institutions do not function to support the economy. Currently, we are agrarian economy based on cocoa. I mean, we've done this for how many years? Over 100 years. Why haven't we talked about even going to maize, common maize? We haven't. We all create institutions, this and that and that. But you see, instead of you getting to the private sector, identify them and give them the task, lower interest rate, good facilities where they can do the storage. Who buys? I mean, value chain issues. If we do that, Francis, we stand a better chance. But the way we are going is not integrated. It's becoming a piecemeal approach. I would say that we should have a national discourse on this economic diversification. Identify which projects have products have competitive and comparative advantage. Maize, tomatoes, onions, all these things can be produced without importation. Nobody looks at it. We talk about it. So I'm saying that we should, as a nation, have a national discourse on this economic diversification. Nigeria used to import rice about 10 billion. Today, it does a little as about 2-3 billion. We import rice every year, 1.2 billion. If Nigerians can grow rice, we can grow rice in Ghana. Why? I mean, the talk is too much. Let us look at the private sector. All the things they are creating, let them identify the private sector as they did. Let me commend them as they did. You know, we are going for African continental trade. There's one thing people have forgotten. One thing I take a heart for this government is that they came and supported pharmaceuticals. So our pharmaceutical, I'm telling you, is going to be the giant in Africa. So we should do the same thing for the rice, the maize, identify the private sector and let them do it. If we do it, Francis, this country will turn over. This debt that we are talking about, we will be able to get over it. And one area I also want to advise the government, that's one of the short-term approach or strategy, is to rethink through the remittances space, the foreign remittances space. Yesterday, I struck on an information from Bangladesh. Remittances this year has given them 19.8 billion reserves. This is, if you can check it. Ghana has remittances. I mean, last year, according to the Bank of Ghana, we have 57 billion Cedi. It is not a Cedi we are talking about. We're talking about the dollar. Who is holding that $5 billion equivalent? And who passed the act to let foreign things to be held overseas? without coming into the country. When the banks, we call the authorized dealer banks, are capturing all remittances, the fintech is withholding remittances. This is what we call regulatory dichotomy or regulatory arbitrage. We should stop it and let everybody comply with the Foreign Exchange Act. If we do that, Francis, I'm assuring you, a government can summon courage to look at what I'm saying. This country will never be where we are. Because remittances withheld is 5 billion last year. The other one was 3 billion. It's 8 billion. If all 8 billion come into the economy, the city will stand and appreciate, not depreciate. So let them think through. Let them bring people together, independent mind, and see how this economy, and I'm saying, and I will say, remittances alone is far more exceeding about cocoa and gold and oil. And if we can capture the remittances I'm talking about, Francis, we'll not be talking about depreciation. We'll be talking about appreciation of the city.
The president recently went for the Global Peace Summit in Switzerland. And at that meeting, he sat down with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss issues of peace and bilateral cooperation. Among the many things that were said, there was also the request made by the president that we should facilitate the export of Ukrainian agricultural products to Ghana. What do you make of this move and the grains that are required to show up our demand in Ghana from Ukraine?
Thank you very much. The little said about the comments, the better. Because my father was a farmer. I won't say agriculture. He was a farmer. My mother was a farmer. And we used to produce tomatoes and export. I mean, my mother used to hire this big truck and go and sell tomatoes at Burkina Faso. I remember they used to call it Waga. And I used to ask my parents, what is this Waga? Not knowing that it's Burkina Faso. What I'm saying is that let us not become import-dependent in economy. You see, this started in Gordon Gaddisberg time, 1920-something to 1957. Instead of me sitting down, there is only one head of state. Let me commend that head of state. And may he so rest in perfect peace. When Achampon came to power, Cedi, I mean, that year, we produced maize so much, plantains so much. It was done by Ghanaians. It wasn't done by anybody. Private sector. You see, let us take a decision by the bull by horn rather than depending. You see, the more you support them to bring their wheat or maize, what it means is that the economy will grow and you will become import-dependent economy. And you always go and beg. Why can't you do that? Can you go to Ivory Coast and say what you are saying here? No. Because they have diversified the economy so that it can stand. You won't travel to go and talk about maize or wheat. No. After all, Nigerians stopped importing wheat, if you don't know, about 2006. They use maize. They use maize bread. And according to the nutritionist, I'm told it is richer than wheat. Why people are using maize bread in Nigeria, and we think here and we want to go and... So let us come out of this talk and begin to take action. That's why I told you, Francis, I told you, let it be a national discourse, not a political discourse. We have too many political discourse which do not help us. National discourse means that we gather everybody. Forget about your political background and let us share experience, best experience, and transform our economy. This is the country we belong to. So I think they should stop these things and begin to think like Ghanaians. Ghanaians, when I say Ghanaians, look, domestication. I mean, until we domesticate, we will continue for the city running like Usain Bolt. The city will run because we import basically everything. Things that we could even cultivate and eat in Ghana, we import it. Why don't we want to stop that? So for me, I don't buy those ideas. I think that Ghanaians are capable, hardworking people. Let us look at the country and begin to think about economic diversification from the cocoa to other sectors where we can grow maize. Yesterday we bought a yam. I mean, I went to the market with my wife. One yam is 50 Ghana cedis. I can imagine if you convert it in dollar. I mean, it's how much if we were to import it. So let us not deceive ourselves that somebody from Europe will come and help us. Let us do what we call domestication, like a champon and papa domestication. And when we do it 3-4 years with the remittances back in the domestication, Ghana will be a paradise. Ghana will be a paradise. Cedi will stabilize. Cedi will appreciate. Businessmen will have freedom. Inflation will come down. The economy will be on the up. So that is what I say, Francis, this morning.
What of the cash crops that we already have that we are exporting, and the matter of value addition?
You know, when you talk about value addition, you're just only producing and possibly packaging it or doing some chips and turning it and taking down. You are not even producing enough. You see, you are not producing enough, let alone when you export. The question is that you should first look at your production capacity. It is only when you have the production, then you begin to take the value added. That what can I do to add value? Because if we continue with the way we continue with cocoa, get a world cocoa to them, and then with cocoa, I'm told cocoa trade is about 50 billion or 250 billion or thereabout. And Africa and Ivory Coast and other people get as low as maybe 10 billion. I mean, because if you produce and you don't think, if you produce, it is only when you produce, then you begin to think, can I collaborate or do a strategic alliance with somebody to come and help us to develop it to meet international standards? Because don't forget, the EU has a standard for even food importation. Recently, you heard about, I think, one of the products that went there. So when you produce enough, you produce to meet both local and international capacity, to international levels, so that it will move both local and international. So it's not a question of just producing. Producing by adding value means that you need to have a value chain. A value chain, if it's maize, a value chain. How it's cultivated, what fertilizer we use in doing it, who harvests it, how it's harvested, how it's stored, how it's packaged, which market is it going. I mean, all these things are things that we need to look at it so that this economy, which have been an agrarian economy over the years, will move from export, production, and diversification economy.
Dr. Johnny, before I let you go, we are spending quite a lot on importing. And one of the biggest collectors, or should I say, what's taking a lot out of our economy by way of foreign exchange. Spare parts is one, rice is another. In fact, in Ghana, per our consumption, we consume roots and tubers more. That's first. Second is maize. Third is rice.
And then poultry.
So out of these four, roots and tubers we are taking care of, we are doing a lot more in country. However, for maize, we have the capacity to meet demand, but we're still importing. Poultry, we're importing, and they are closely related because of feed and everything. Then there's rice as well. For these three items, maize, rice, poultry, what do we do to turn that money that we're using in Forex to keep it in country?
Thank you very much. And I'm very grateful to you for such a wonderful question. The reason being is that if maybe you're not older than, you're not old, too old like me, there was a time a man called Akoko Daku. Kwabrada Daku. He's called Akoko Daku.
Oh, yes,
he
I know
used to produce, yes. He used to produce so much that in the whole Ashanti region and even Accra, what happened to it? You see, as businesses model changes, the private business sector should also look at changes and modify their program so that they can meet international market. So for me, the private sector should always be recognized in this scheme of affairs. I don't believe in the state sector at all. If you ask me my candid opinion about state institutions, I will get rid of almost everything and then give it to the private sector. After all, look at transport, OA and the VIPs. They travel far and long. They still survive. Immediately you bring the government sector in, we create position, we call what we call captured position for people. They don't work and they get paid. So let us encourage the private sector. That is why I'm saying that these development banks, the Exim Bank and Agric Bank, should be repositioned and refocused on the sectors that will help us to help the poultry farmers, the sectors that will help us to the rice producers, the sectors that will help the maize producers. For the spare parts and everything, there is little you can do because, you see, at the end of it all, we don't even manufacture the cars here. Even if we manufacture, your marginal propensity to buy a car in Ghana is zero because your salary is as low as anything. So once we use the car, the spare parts will come. So let the other sectors help us to supply the currency, and let the other sectors where we can actually maybe control some of the importation. Like, we cannot let everybody, chewing sticks and all those things cannot be coming into the country. Because if we don't take care, we become a dumping ground for countries. Now we are becoming a dumping ground. Instead of we producing things that we can produce. Recently, I think I spoke to you last time, mangoes, we imported mangoes of, I think, 100 and something million from Burkina Faso. Is it not a disgrace to the economy? It's a disgrace to those who have been in affairs all these years. Because can't we go to Akuse area, Ada? I mean, I've been there before, so many aside. People are in serious producing this thing. Why don't we encourage the private sector to go in? When I say encourage, lower, not cheap fund, a fund that will meet agri needs. You can't go and borrow 31%, 32% for agri. You need to do about 9% or 7%. And if government choose to even subsidize that one for the farmers, I think we'll be able to turn this economy around. The rice you're talking about, the maize, I don't think we have the capacity. Let me give you a secret. There's a Nigerian who has come into this country. If you go to UG area, he has come in cultivating cane sugar and rice. There's a Nigerian, I won't mention his name, because I traveled there recently and I was shown the project. And I say that if somebody can come from Nigeria to do this in our own country, why don't we encourage those who are in? Like the person that I traveled to look at his rice farm. This person has money, but he needs technical support. He needs a bit of financial support. All these people, Ghanaians are good. Let me commend the private sector. Let me take my heart for the private sector. The private sector has been so, even in the midst of this crisis, is the private sector who is supporting us. So let us help them so that the private sector can look at the things that you have said. It is not beyond them. I think rice and maize, poultry. I mean, go to Ivory Coast. I was doing a project for somebody in Sunyani. You know, he told me that in Ivory Coast, you don't import these fowls or dead chickens from overseas. You have the feed production, you have the maize production, everything is internal so that the economy grows. People are creating employment, people are raising. So that is the model that I think we have reached, that Ghanaians should summon courage. All these politicians who are talking English and whatever, let them take this serious economic diversification to help the private sector to cultivate what we eat and export some of what we eat to overseas. That will bring the cedi down until we come down. And then with the little support of the remittances which are not being properly captured, if we track and capture the remittances well, like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, Ghana will be a paradise. And I want a leader. I want a leader, like Lord Watkins said. We want the Lincoln leadership to take Ghana from low pace to a top base. That is what I'll say this morning.
Dr. Richard Metiani, I thank you very much for your time and for joining us.
Thank you, Francis, for the opportunity given to me.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for your time. That's Dr. Richard Metiani. He's a senior banking consultant sharing his thoughts with us on the matter of our currency and the actions we have to take to back it up to make it a lot more better and healthy going forward. It's 3 minutes to 9. Go for a short break now. When I return, we're entering the chieftaincy corner, but on two levels. One is the government here speaking to all of us to put our shoulder to the wheel in keeping our crack clean. He said, put aside the politics, let's get our city clean. We'll hear him and let you have your say. Then, the chiefs as well are speaking about not doing political endorsements, even as we are in the election year and we're heading towards the presidential and parliamentary elections. We hear both sides of the coin, and then we'll let you, our wonderful listeners, have your say. We're back after the break. Stay with us.
It's what